Your Grace, you're asking the wrong woman, Tabitha Brandon said, as Henry's gloved fingers closed around hers. Around them, Dorothea Yardley's fan snapped shut. Lady Camilla Hollingsworth went pale beneath her pearl combs. Every lady in the Vainford ballroom stared at the 40-year-old spinster no gentleman had asked to dance in 15 years. Henry, Duke of Whitmore, only bowed lower. The candlelight caught the dull, silver-gray satin of Tabitha's gown. Dorothea had chosen it for her that afternoon with a satisfied little smile. Respectable, faded, safe. A gown for a chaperone who was meant to blend with the pillars and curtains while younger women shone. Yet here stood the most desired duke in Wiltshire with Tabitha's hand in his dark coat severe against the glow of 100 wax candles, his scarred fingers warm through her glove. Tabitha's free hand dropped to her reticule. Her fingers found the hard ivory clasp of her commonplace book. He is using me to punish someone. The thought was as quick as a pinprick. Henry had come from the peninsula with a cold reputation and a title every mother coveted. He had refused 3 introductions in 10 minutes. He had ignored Dorothea's shining niece. Now he was choosing the plainest target in the room. She would not be his weapon. She would not be his joke. "Your Grace," she said, keeping her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Lady Camilla is standing 3 paces to your left. I am merely the architecture." The Duke's gray eyes did not move toward Camilla. "I know where Lady Camilla stands, Miss Brandon." "Then you also know you are creating a scandal. I am asking for a dance." His thumb shifted a small pressure against her knuckles. "Are you refusing?" To refuse a duke in the middle of a ballroom would give Dorothea enough material to punish her until Easter. To accept was to walk before a line of loaded muskets, every muzzle made of whisper and silk. Tabitha lifted her chin. She had survived 2 decades of being overlooked. She would survive 3 minutes of being seen. She stepped with him onto the floor. The musicians, after one stunned pause, began a waltz. It was still new enough in country rooms to make dowagers stiffen, which made it a fitting punishment for a woman who had done nothing wrong. It was only one dance. It was meant to be only one dance. Earlier that evening, the order of the world had been perfectly secure. Dorothea Yardley, Tabitha's widowed cousin and hostess, had summoned Tabitha to her dressing room and inspected the gray satin as if examining household linen. "You look wonderfully safe, Tabitha," Dorothea had said. "Stay close to Camilla tonight. If Whitmore looks her way, drift into the background." "You know how to drift, do you not?" Tabitha knew. She was 40. In London and Wiltshire alike, 40 unmarried years made a woman useful furniture. She mended misunderstandings. She managed seating charts. She rescued shy girls from talkative colonels and drew drunker squires away from the card room before they insulted anyone with influence. No one thanked a chair for holding its place. Lady Camilla, Dorothea's young niece, had clutched Tabitha's arm before the ball began. "Must I like him?" she whispered, looking toward the doorway as servants announced the arriving carriages. "You need not like anyone on command," Tabitha replied. Dorothea had heard enough to cut in. A girl need not be philosophical when a duke is expected. So Tabitha had arranged the candles, corrected the footman who nearly placed Lord Merton beside the draughty window, and softened the insult by telling the Baron that the hearth would better illuminate his distinguished waistcoat. It was a lie, but a useful one. The room settled. No one noticed the hand that had steadied it. Except Henry. He had arrived late, snow on the shoulders of his dark cloak, and surrendered it with the abruptness of a soldier. He had not smiled at the mothers. He had not bent toward Dorothea's curtsy. He had watched Tabitha spare an elderly man humiliation. Now he was leading her through a ballroom that had forgotten how to breathe. Tabitha held her spine rigid. Silk rustled at the edges of the floor. Fans hid mouths, but not eyes. "You hold yourself as if you expect to blow," Henry said beneath the violins. "I expect reality, Your Grace." "Reality has rarely disappointed me." A muscle moved in his jaw. "And what does reality dictate that a man of your rank does not invite a woman of mine to dance, unless he means to insult someone else? You think I am using you to slight Mrs. Yardley. I think you are a man returned from war who finds our little maneuvers tedious. I am simply the most shocking object you could pick up and throw." Her voice stayed even. The edge was sharp enough. "Do not mistake me for grateful." His gaze altered. The coldness did not soften. It deepened. "You are not an object, Miss Brandon. And if I wished to insult Mrs. Yardley, I would not require a shield." The music swelled. His hand was firm at her waist, proper, controlled. Still, Tabitha felt the attention of the room, like heat on bare skin. 40 if she is a day. Poor creature. He must be mocking her. The words reached her in scraps. Tabitha's fingers curled inward. Through the reticule's silk, her thumb found the shape of the little book she carried everywhere. Inside were verses copied by candlelight, a dried violet, a narrow piece of blue ribbon from a gown she had once hoped to wear as a bride, and never did. Want had become a private illness. The book was the only place she allowed it to live. "They are laughing, Your Grace," she said. "Let them." "That is easily said by a duke. It is harder for a dependent spinster who must live on their tolerance tomorrow." Henry stopped. It was not a missed step. It was a halt in the very center of the ballroom. The violins stumbled. His eyes lowered to hers, and something of the battlefield entered the candlelight. "Who in this room grants you tolerance?" he asked. The word "granted" struck her harder than the laughter. "I did not mean coin." "I did." Then he resumed the waltz, but the hold had changed. Not possessive, placing, as if he had marked the exact ground on which she stood and would not permit the room to move it beneath her. That was dangerous. A woman could mistake such steadiness for rescue. He could not protect her. Not really. When the dance ended, she would return to the wall, and he would return to the brilliant center where dukes belonged. The last note faded. Henry bowed. Tabitha curtsied and stepped back at once, already searching for the safest shadow. "Miss Brandon," he said. She turned. He did not offer a compliment on her dancing. His gaze dropped, not to her gown, but to the reticule at her wrist. "The subscription list you were reviewing by the side table earlier. It concerns the reading room in the village, does it not?" Tabitha went still. The Brandon reading room was the one piece of the world that carried her name without mockery. It occupied 2 cold rooms behind the parish hall and survived on coins she saved from her allowance. There, girls learned letters before they were sent into service, or married off with no more understanding than a parcel tied in brown paper. "It is of no consequence to Your Grace," she said. "I disagree." His voice carried just far enough for Dorothea's listening ears. "I will call tomorrow to discuss it." Tabitha stared at him. He was playing a cruel game, or he had seen something she had spent years teaching the world not to see. The next morning, snow locked Vainford Hall in white silence. The roads to Whitmore Park disappeared beneath drifts, and Henry remained as Dorothea's unwilling guest. The house changed shape around him. Servants carried more wood to the blue guest chamber. Dorothea smiled too brightly at breakfast. Camilla was placed beside the Duke, with a white ribbon in her curls and misery in her eyes. Tabitha retreated into usefulness. She sorted only what could not wait, sealed a note for the parish clerk, and carried the reading room ledger to the library before Dorothea could discover it among the morning accounts. The room was cold. The fire had been neglected, and her hands were stiff by the time she knelt near the lowest shelf to hide the ledger behind Dorothea's millinery bills. A measured tread stopped at the doorway. Without looking up, Tabitha said, "Tea will be served in the drawing room, Your Grace. Lady Camilla is wearing a very becoming blue ribbon, and has been arranged there for your convenience." "I do not care for tea." "No." She drew out the ledger and rose, dusting her fingers. "Then perhaps you care for blue ribbons." "Even less." Henry stood in the doorway, broad shoulders blocking the pale winter light. His cravat was tied with military plainness, his expression composed enough to frighten a weaker woman. Tabitha was not weak. She was only tired. "Then what do you care for, Your Grace?" He remained by the table instead of crossing the room. The courtesy of that distance unsettled her more than boldness would have done. "I care to know why the accounts for the reading room are hidden beneath bills for feathers and French lace." Tabitha's grip tightened on the ledger. "Because if Dorothea finds them, she will call the expense sentimental and stop my allowance until I abandon it." "Is it sentimental to teach girls to read?" In Dorothea's eyes, yes. A girl who reads may learn to question a contract before she signs it. Tabitha heard the bitterness in her voice and hated that he heard it too. Questions are inconvenient when other people are arranging the bargain. At that word, Henry's expression hardened, not at her, at something behind her. "His sister, Eleanor," the county whispered, "had been bargained into a magnificent marriage while Henry was bleeding in Spain. The husband had been titled rich and cruel. Eleanor had died before her 24th birthday. Henry had returned a duke and had never again been known as a forgiving man. "So you teach them to read," he said to give them armor. "I teach them to survive." He looked at her then, truly looked. Not at the lines near her eyes or the unfashionable restraint of her gown, at the part of her that had remained awake while the world called her finished. "And who gives you armor, Miss Brandon?" "I make my own." She stacked the primers on top of the ledger. "Now, if you will excuse me, I must find Camilla's shawl before Dorothea blames the weather on my negligence." She passed him. He did not catch her arm. He did not turn the conversation into a command. But as she moved, by the warmth of him reached through the cold library air, and for one foolish breath, she wanted to stop. She did not. 2 days later, the coal arrived at the village reading room. Not one scuttle, not a polite basket, 3 carts of it, paid in full, with a note from the coal merchant saying the account had been settled for the season. The girls cheered in the yard, their patched shawls flapping as men carried sacks into the parish rooms. Little Bess Carter, who still confused her B's and D's, pressed both hands to the nearest sack as if it were a treasure chest. "We shall not have to write with our gloves on," Bess said. "No," Tabitha replied, and her voice nearly failed her. "You shall not." She knew who had sent it. That night, after the household had gone to bed, Tabitha sat alone in the library at Vainford Hall. The fire had burned low. A single candle stood by her elbow. Beyond the windows, the lawns lay blue under moonlit snow. She opened the ivory clasp of her commonplace book. The leather was worn at the corners from years of secret handling. Her private pages smelled faintly of paper violet and old candle smoke. She turned past copied lines of poetry, household recipes she had not wished to forget, and a pressed ribbon the color of a clear May sky. A blank page waited. Her pen hovered. "I am a fool," she thought. "I am 40 years old. A man bought coal for children, and I am sitting here making it tender." She wrote carefully. "A hand offered late, is still a hand, but a hungry heart must not mistake one crumb for a feast. A floorboard creaked. Tabitha snapped the book shut. Henry stepped from the shadow near the door. He wore shirt sleeves and an unbuttoned waistcoat, his dark hair roughened as if he had passed a hand through it too many times. In the dimness, he looked less like the Duke of Whitmore and more like a man who had not slept well in years. "I beg your pardon," he said. "I saw the candle. I thought a servant had left it burning. I was just leaving." She pressed the book to her chest. His eyes touched the ivory clasp. He had seen the movement, perhaps the open page. Shame rose hot and childish. She was too old to be caught with longings in her lap. "I did not send the coal as charity," he said. The words sounded torn from him, as if he had been fighting them in the corridor. Tabitha swallowed. "Then why did you send it, Your Grace?" "Because yesterday you ordered your own scuttle moved to Mrs. Yardley's chamber, and by supper your hands were blue." She froze. She had done it without thought. Dorothea had complained of a draught. Tabitha had known there was no more coal until morning, so she had instructed the footman to move hers. No one had noticed. No one ever did. Henry had. "You spend your life ensuring everyone else is warm," he said. "Lady Camilla, those village girls, even a woman who has made an occupation of diminishing you." His hand curled once at his side, then opened. "You stand in a ballroom and take ridicule so another girl may be spared it. You are the bravest woman in this house, and they treat you like a ghost." The sharpness she lived behind trembled. Not broke, trembled. "Do not," she said. "Do not what?" "Do not look at me and see only a sorrow to set right." Her voice shook, despite her best effort. "I am not your sister." The words landed like a struck bell. Henry went utterly still. Tabitha should have stopped. She did not. If he was going to see her, he would see the thorns as well as the wound beneath them. "You hate Dorothea. You hate these rooms and all their pretty bargains because they remind you of what happened to Lady Eleanor. You see me as another woman sold cheaply by polite society, and you want to punish them by raising me up. But my life is not your battlefield, Your Grace. I will not be made into proof of your anger." His face was pale in the candlelight. "You think this is vengeance? I think anger is the only thing you permit yourself to feel," she said, softer now, and therefore more dangerous. "Because if you stop being angry, you must feel grief. And if you feel grief, you must admit you could not save her." For a moment, neither of them moved. Tabitha clutched the book so tightly the ivory clasp pressed into her palm. She had insulted a duke in his host's library after midnight. She waited for the ice to return, for dismissal, for the old proof that wanting honesty had been foolish. Instead, Henry took one step closer. He did not touch her. "You are right," he said. The simplicity of it struck harder than anger. "I have used fury because it was cleaner than grief. I have called it justice when it was sometimes only pain wearing a coat. But you are wrong about one thing, Miss Brandon." Tabitha looked up. "I am not looking at a tragedy. I am looking at a woman who hides her heart in a little ivory book because every room she has entered has taught her that wanting is unbecoming. The door inside her, the one she had held shut for 20 years, shifted on its hinges. She did not cry. She would not give the night that victory. But her breath came unevenly, and the exhaustion of pretending she did not care washed through her like thaw water. It is dangerous to want things when one has no power to keep them. Henry lifted his hand, then stopped. The pause was slight, but she saw it. He was asking without words. Tabitha could have stepped back. She did not. His knuckles brushed the side of her cheek, barely there warmer than the dying fire. The touch was not possession. It was recognition. "Then you must have power of your own," he said. For one breath, Tabitha leaned into the warmth. Then she drew back. Henry let his hand fall at once. The space between them remained proper. Nothing improper had happened. Yet, when Tabitha left the library, the house seemed different. The walls had not moved. She had. The next morning, Dorothea struck. The snow had cleared enough for carriages, and Whitmore Park was to hold its supper ball that evening. Dorothea had spoken of little else for days. It was the room in which she meant to display Camilla before a duke, and force expectation to do the work affection would not. Tabitha was sealing a note to the parish clerk about the coal account when Dorothea entered the morning room and shut the door. The smile fell from her face. "I have been blind," Dorothea said. "I thought you merely pathetic, Tabitha. I did not understand you were ambitious." Tabitha laid down the seal. "Those are heavy accusations to carry before breakfast. Do not sharpen your tongue at me. Half the servants are whispering. The Duke danced with you. He asks for your opinion on books. He sends coal to your dirty little girls." Dorothea stepped closer. "You are trying to steal Camilla's match." "Camilla does not want the match." "Camilla is 17. She wants what she is instructed to want. She is a young woman, not a spaniel." Dorothea's eyes flashed. "Careful." Tabitha folded her hands in her lap so Dorothea would not see them tremble. "If you show your face at Whitmore Park tonight," Dorothea said, each word soft and poisonous, "I shall make the county understand exactly what you are. A desperate, aging dependent who used pity to entangle a gentleman above her station. I shall say you contrived private meetings. I shall say you compromised yourself to trap him." The room narrowed. Such a claim needed no proof if spoken by the right mouth. Dorothea had standing. Tabitha had usefulness. That was not the same as protection. "And if you do that," Tabitha said, "you will drag Camilla through the mud with me. A little mud dries. A dukedom lasts." Dorothea leaned over the desk. "If you cost that girl her chance, you will leave this house tomorrow. No allowance, no references, no reading room. You will discover how little dignity warms a bed." She swept out. Tabitha remained seated. For several minutes, she heard nothing but the tick of the mantel clock and the blood in her ears. The old lesson rose at once. Leave. Erase yourself before the room makes a spectacle of you. Pack one trunk, walk to the village. Let them say you were ill. Let the girl be spared. Let the Duke forget. It would be easy, because she had been practicing disappearance all her life. A soft knock came at the side door. Camilla slipped in, white-faced, twisting a ribbon between her fingers. "Cousin Tabitha, Aunt says I am not to speak with you." "Then we shall have to be brief." Tabitha's voice steadied because Camilla needed it. The girl's eyes shone. "I heard her. I heard enough. I never asked for this. I like Mr. Felton from the rectory. He has no fortune, and Aunt says that is the same as having no face. But he knows when I am frightened." Tabitha looked at the child Dorothea meant to trade as neatly as a carriage horse. A sharp, clean anger cut through the panic. "I cannot choose for you," Tabitha said. Camilla's mouth trembled. "No one ever says that." "Then hear it twice. I cannot choose for you. But if anyone asks you what you want, You may answer. No title in England can make your own voice dishonorable. Camilla drew one breath, then another. Will you come tonight? Tabitha looked down at the commonplace book lying beside the unfinished note. The ivory clasp caught the thin winter light. A hand offered late is still a hand. If she ran now, Dorothea would not merely win. Dorothea would be proved right. A woman past 40 would again become furniture, moved aside for a younger bargain. I will come, Tabitha said. The ballroom at Whitmore Park was ablaze with candles when she arrived. Whitmore Park made Vainford Hall look like a pretty box. Marble columns rose beside velvet hangings. Footmen in dark livery moved with trays of negus and ratafia. The county had come to watch a duke choose a bride, and many believed they already knew her name. Tabitha entered quietly in the same silver-gray satin. She had considered changing. Then she had decided against it. Let Dorothea see the gown she had chosen for invisibility carried into the brightest room in Wiltshire. A few women noticed her first. Their fans lifted. Whispers ran outward like a spill of ink. There she is. Bold of her. Poor Lady Camilla. Tabitha felt every word and kept walking. Camilla stood near the center of the room in white muslin pale, but no longer empty-eyed. Dorothea hovered at her side, smiling with such force that it looked painful. Henry stood by the hearth, severe in evening dress. No jeweled glitter softened him. He needed none. Authority sat on him like a well-cut coat. He saw Tabitha immediately. For one moment the room vanished from his face, not softened, opened. Then he started toward her. Dorothea moved first. "Your Grace," she called, pitching her voice to carry through the pause between dances. "We were so hoping you would lead dear Camilla out for the supper dance, though I fear the poor child has been distressed today." The musicians faltered. Conversations thinned. Henry stopped. Distressed? Indeed. Dorothea's eyes slid to Tabitha. It is a dreadful thing when kindness is abused. An older woman kept in a house out of Christian duty should know better than to insert herself where she does not belong. Silence spread in a widening circle. Tabitha felt the old chill. The first stone thrown by a room was always quiet. Dorothea continued, emboldened by attention. A woman past her time can become grasping. She may mistake a gentleman's pity for preference. She may even attempt to steal a future from a girl young enough to be her daughter. Henry's face went blank. The War Duke had arrived. He stepped forward, and his voice carried cleanly to the farthest wall. "Mrs. Yardley, you will either explain your meaning plainly, or you will leave my house." Dorothea flinched. But pride once mounted in public was a difficult horse to dismount. "I mean, Your Grace, that Miss Brandon has used her position in my household to pursue you. She is a dependent. She has no fortune, no youth, no proper claim upon your attention. She has made herself ridiculous, and my niece has suffered for it." A sound moved through the room. Not quite approval, not quite horror. The county was leaning forward to see who would bleed. Henry came to stand beside Tabitha. He offered his arm, his whole presence a shield sharpened by rank. "Miss Brandon has made no pursuit," he said. Tabitha looked at his arm. For one aching second she wanted to take it, to let his title cover her, to be safe, because he had chosen to make her safe. Then she remembered the girls in the reading room sounding out their own names for the first time. A borrowed voice was not freedom. She stepped forward without taking his arm. Henry turned his head. He understood at once. He did not retreat, but he ceased to lead. Tabitha faced the room. "I have not stolen Lady Camilla's future," she said. Her voice was clear enough to surprise even herself. "Because Lady Camilla is not an ornament to be stolen, nor a parcel to be signed over with the supper wine." Several matrons gasped. Tabitha did not look away. "Mrs. Yardley is correct in one respect. I am 40 years old. I have no great fortune. I live in another woman's house and earn my keep by making myself useful. I have stood against walls until people forgot I could hear them." Dorothea's face tightened. "But usefulness is not ownership. Age is not disgrace. And dignity does not expire because a woman has not married by the year society prefers." The silence changed. It was still dangerous, but now it belonged to her. Tabitha turned to Camilla. "Lady Camilla, did I ever ask you to refuse his grace?" Camilla trembled. Dorothea made a small, warning sound. Henry's voice cut through it, low and lethal. "Let her answer." Camilla lifted her chin. "No." Tabitha kept her gaze gentle. "Did I ever advise you to seek his grace's attention for me?" "No," Camilla said, stronger now. "You were the only person who asked whether I wanted his." "And what do you want?" The girl looked once at Dorothea, once at the Duke, and then at the whole astonished room. "I do not wish to marry the Duke of Whitmore." Her voice shook, then steadied. "I am very sorry, Your Grace." Henry bowed as if she had granted him a favour. "Lady Camilla, you have my thanks." A murmur broke across the room. Not scandal now, but astonishment. Dorothea had built her accusation on a silent girl. The girl had spoken. Tabitha turned back. "I wore grey because you told me it made me invisible," she said to Dorothea. "I let you call me safe. I let you call me finished. But I will not let you call my life a thing you may threaten whenever I displease you. The reading room is not yours. My name is not yours. And my heart, late as it may be, is not yours to shame." Dorothea's mouth opened. No sound came. For the first time in all the years Tabitha had known her, Dorothea had no audience willing to complete her sentence. Only then did Henry move. He stepped in front of Tabitha, not to hide her from the room, but to face her as if the room no longer mattered. "Miss Brandon," he said. The formal address carried tenderness because he had chosen to use it before them all. "I came to Wiltshire believing myself too old for hope and too angry for gentleness. You proved me wrong in the most inconvenient manner possible." A startled laugh flickered somewhere near the wall. Even Tabitha's mouth almost curved. Henry did not smile. His eyes held hers. "You taught me that justice without tenderness is only another weapon. You taught me that a woman may be overlooked by a room and still be the strongest person in it. And you have made it impossible for me to return to any life in which you are not seen." He held out his hand. Not a command, not rescue. A choice laid in the open. "Tabitha," he said, using her name as if it had weight and beauty, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The ballroom held its breath. Tabitha looked at his hand. A strong hand. A scarred hand. A hand that had stopped short in a dark library and waited for permission. Then she looked at Henry himself, not at the dukedom, not at the room he could give her, at the man who had noticed blue hands, hidden ledgers, and the private courage of remaining kind while sharpened by neglect. For a heartbeat, fear rose one last time. If she said yes, the county would not become kind overnight. They would call her clever, grasping, fortunate beyond deserving. Dorothea would turn her into a warning whispered over tea. Some would say Henry had married a ghost because grief had made him strange. A safe woman would refuse. A safe woman would step back, thank him, and return to the wall before the room could decide she had reached too high. Tabitha had been safe long enough. 40 years old, no fortune, too late. Then she heard her own voice in the reading room, telling Camilla that no title in England could make a woman's own voice dishonorable. Tabitha placed her hand in his. "Yes, Henry," she said. "I will." The room exhaled. The wedding was small. It was not held in London, or in the grand chapel at Whitmore Park, but in the parish church near the village. Henry had offered every grandeur his rank could provide. Tabitha had asked for the place where the girls could walk without borrowing a carriage, so the pews filled with children from the Brandon reading room, each holding winter holly and the earliest snowdrops the vicar's wife could coax from the churchyard wall. Bess Carter sat in front, mouthing the words of the service as if practicing a lesson. Lady Camilla stood beside Tabitha in a yellow day dress, bright-eyed and unburdened. Dorothea had gone to Bath for her nerves. No one in Wiltshire had tried very hard to stop her. Tabitha wore deep sapphire blue, not girlish, not apologetic. A rich, quiet blue that made her silvering temples and steady eyes seem deliberate, as if every year she had lived had gathered into color. Henry looked at her through the whole service, as though the church were crowded with queens, and he had found the only one. When the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Henry did not make a performance of claiming her. He bent, waited the smallest instant for her lifted face, and kissed her with a tenderness so steady that the reading room girls burst into whispers behind their gloves. Later, in the carriage returning to Whitmore Park, Tabitha took the commonplace book from her new ridicule. Henry's shoulder rested warm beside hers. "Will you hide it from me?" No. The word was small. It changed everything. She opened the ivory clasp. The old pages remained, copied poems, pressed flowers, secret hungers, the sentence about crumbs and feasts. She turned them without shame now. Near the middle, something slipped loose. A dance card. The one from Vainford Hall. Her name stood on it in Henry's sharp military hand, written where no one had thought to write it for 15 years. Tabitha looked up. "You kept it," she said. "I wrote it before I crossed the room," Henry replied. That undid her more than any grand declaration could have done. Not impulse, not pity. He had chosen before the room laughed, before she defended herself, before she believed him capable of seeing her. Her fingers closed around the card. "Why?" she asked. His answer came without ornament. Because when everyone else watched the pretty girl in white, you were saving an old man's pride. Because you looked at a room that had given you nothing and still made it kinder. Because I wanted one honest thing in my hand before I asked you for a dance. The carriage wheels rolled over the thawing road. For once, Tabitha did not place the feeling in a locked corner of herself. She took up the traveling pen from the little desk and opened to a blank page beside the card. She thought of gray satin, of blue hands, of Camilla's shaking voice, of Henry's hand waiting in the air until she chose it. Then she wrote not a secret, but a fact. Late was not the same as never.